Earlier this year, the world's fastest-growing social media platform abruptly went offline amid the threat of a potential US government ban. What I suspect, and what TikTok never openly admitted and likely will not, is that something clever and strategically quiet happened during that blackout. The removal of the very algorithm that made it one of the most powerful forces in global social media. I strongly suspect the platform seized the opportunity to quietly replace its global algorithm, the one that gave everyone a fair shot at going viral and didn't suppress content critical of the US government, or events we're now conveniently not supposed to talk about. Because when the app came back online, something was different. Everyone's For You page had shifted. Entire topics were missing. Current events were buried. Even footage of the LA fires was pushed so deep into the feed that most people never saw it. And that's when it became clear. The algorithm we knew, the one everyone loved, was gone. What's interesting is that after all this, ByteDance stopped resisting calls to sell the platform, a stark contrast to their earlier, relentless fight to keep ownership. I believe the past few years gave TikTok's engineers time to quietly build a replica of their original algorithm, but stripped of the very qualities that made the app so beloved in the first place. So when the moment came to sell, they could hand over the product without surrendering their most valuable asset. And in this video, I'm going to break down what I think really happened the night TikTok went offline, and why it matters. In January, a new US law banning TikTok took effect just hours after the app suddenly stopped functioning nationwide. Late that Saturday, US users were met with a pop-up notification stating that the ban had officially been enacted, making the app unavailable to everyone at that moment. The blackout, paired with hints that service might be restored, became the latest chapter in a months-long standoff that left TikTok's future uncertain. Around the same time, TikTok disappeared from both Apple's App Store and Google Play. Other ByteDance apps like CapCut showed similar messages, signaling that this wasn't an isolated shutdown. What's particularly striking is that this happened roughly 60 hours before TikTok was scheduled to go dark anyway. So the question is, why would the US move to ban a social platform best known for music and viral videos? The answer lies in long-standing concerns about its ties to the Chinese government. TikTok was given until January 19th to be sold to an approved American buyer, or face a full-scale ban. Former FBI Director Chris Wray warned that TikTok poses a national security threat, noting that Chinese companies are legally obligated to do whatever the Chinese government wants them to do, whether that means sharing data or serving as an instrument of state influence. He further argued that TikTok's US operations are risky because the Chinese government could use the platform to shape public opinion or even gain control over users' devices. The concerns include the possibility that China could harvest data from millions of users or manipulate TikTok's recommendation algorithm, potentially turning it into a tool for influence and information control. Basically, it's about censoring content related to a certain country. Though that's another conversation entirely. Former NSA Director Paul Nakasone echoed these concerns in March 2023, saying he was troubled by the scale of TikTok's data collection, the power of its algorithm, and who ultimately controls it. He warned that TikTok could be used for sweeping influence campaigns, not just by pushing certain narratives, but by silencing them entirely. Some members of Congress have raised similar concerns, pointing to China's reported golden share in ByteDance, a stake that could grant the government influence over the company's decisions. Under China's 2017 National Intelligence Law, the government can legally compel ByteDance to hand over TikTok's user data, and that's at the core of the US government's concern. TikTok acknowledged that an entity affiliated with the Chinese government owns 1% of a ByteDance subsidiary, Douyin Information Service, but insists that this stake has no impact on ByteDance's global operations outside China, including TikTok. The company also argues that because it is incorporated in California and Delaware, it is fully subject to US laws and regulations. TikTok's CEO has also repeatedly stated that the company has never shared US user data with the Chinese government, and never would. The platform also stressed that no government has the ability to alter or influence its recommendation algorithm. That's part of the reason China has its own separate version of the app, Douyin, rather than using the same platform the rest of the world has access to. Despite multiple lawsuits and appeals, TikTok was unable to overturn the law that could ultimately lead to its ban in the US. With its options shrinking, the company is now left with two choices: shut down in the US or sell. And now it appears the Trump administration is preparing a deal that would force TikTok into a sale to an American buyer. The White House hasn't clarified who would ultimately own the US version of TikTok, but the shortlist of potential investors includes several of Trump's key allies. Oracle, co-founded by billionaire Larry Ellison, is reportedly interested in taking a stake. Silver Lake, a major private equity firm, is also expected to invest, along with the Emirati firm MGX. According to sources familiar with the discussions, Trump has also claimed that media magnate Rupert Murdoch would be involved, likely through Fox Corporation. And Michael Dell, the CEO of Dell Technologies, is said to be preparing to invest as well. ByteDance would retain a stake, but a much smaller one. Under the law, no more than 20% of TikTok, or its parent company, can be held by individuals or corporations based in foreign adversary countries, a category that includes China. Existing investors like General Atlantic and Susquehanna are expected to roll their stakes into the new U.S. entity. What remains unclear is whether this patchwork coalition of high-profile investors would actually resolve the national security concerns driving the ban, or satisfy lawmakers determined to see TikTok cut off from Chinese influence. The Trump administration has said the deal structure meets the legal requirements. But the core tension remains. Chinese law requires TikTok's algorithm to stay under Beijing's control, while US law demands the platform sever all operational ties to ByteDance, including any shared control over the algorithm that powers its content recommendations. The Chinese government had long stood in the way of any TikTok sale. But now it seems to have softened its stance, and the reason is telling. The algorithm on the table is no longer the one that made TikTok a global phenomenon. Back in 2020, when US lawmakers first began pushing for a forced sale, Beijing responded by imposing export controls on technologies resembling TikTok's recommendation system. That, I believe, is when a backup plan quietly went into motion: the development of a cloned, less powerful algorithm. By dragging out legal battles and resisting US pressure for years, it seems like ByteDance bought itself the time it needed. Enough time to build an alternate algorithm they could hand over without exposing their most valuable intellectual property, or triggering alarms about what was missing. One of the first things users noticed under the new algorithm was that the platform felt like it had been completely reset, as if everyone's personalization had been wiped clean. Suddenly, if you liked something, you had to work to keep seeing more of it. Watch the full video, like it, comment, bookmark it, even hit share, whether or not you actually plan to share it. Some users even said they had to block Facebook, Meta, and Instagram-related content just to recalibrate their For You page. Because rebuilding your TikTok algorithm takes time, and this one wasn't behaving the way it used to. Worse, the new system started doing questionable things, like ignoring the Not Interested button. Even users with historically progressive feeds started getting extreme or inflammatory content. Gun violence, advocacy, ideological bait, and negativity targeted at the very groups they supported. In other words, it was feeding tension, not preference. And this apparently is the version of TikTok that ByteDance is comfortable handing to the US government. Sure, any security tweaks made over the past 5 years would technically need to be disclosed during a sale, but I highly doubt this one will be. And even if it were, who could prove it? Certainly not me. Look, the deal isn't final yet, and previous attempts to save TikTok have already fallen through. So for now, all we can do is watch how this unfolds.